or CBD, gives the protesters no room to either hide or attack the police station without any possible resistance. The protesters were on their way, marching to IBC offices when the police descended on them with brute force.
We, the police, we are not enemies of Kenyan citizens. We, the police, are not fighting or competing for any elective political post as we are. We only have one duty, to protect lives and properties, and we have no interest on any other issue apart from protecting lives and properties of citizens.
Bishop Kodia of the Anglican Church of Kenya and the police spokesman Charles Owino, when he was on here, on the show actually, last week when we were discussing this very issue. Welcome back. That is the big story tonight. If you check out our tweets, we're asking force or service. So I want to wind up with Eric Kirai for just a moment before we carry on, because I'd like to bring in Macharia and Jeru in just a moment. Eric, my final question to you is how you manage sort of the perception, because there's a certain section of Kenyans, I'm sure you've seen the hashtag Luo Lives Matter. There's a group of people, I mean, and not just with this post-election season that we find ourselves in, but there's a certain group of people that often feel targeted. I know you said you don't like the word profiling, but what assurances can you give tonight to those people that's saying Luo lives matter, and that in the eyes of the police, for them, it doesn't seem to matter? I mean, there may be a lot of investigations you're doing, but what are you doing to bring these people closer and assure them that you are doing everything to find those responsible for these killings and the acts of brutality? To book.
Yvonne, I'll be asking the media to assist me a lot in this by stopping to parrot words which are not accurate. What I would do, and I can tell my brothers in Luoland, Owino has always been a Osiepuna to me, and he has stated it very clearly. There is no targeting, and please let's avoid. If firearms are recovered in your house, we start looking NASA supporter. If something happens, a child is killed, police have done it. Let us avoid labeling evil. Let us also support the institutions we have. I have a few hundreds of Luo friends. We trained in the police. We have served for so many years. We were promoted together. And they can tell you that there is no parade in this country which attempts to profile anybody. The fact of the matter is that police move where the law has been broken. We would want to investigate these cases very fast and have them prosecuted, and we have done that in the past. What I would want to tell the public is that nobody commits murder so that they can be caught. It is a tedious thing, but the government is not only dealing with the person who sneaks behind the police officers to shoot a child. The police is also dealing with the source of these firearms, the source of this very, very nefarious planning, and in the fullness of time, we would want the citizen to believe that, and to also look around and see police have always escorted peaceful demonstrators and protected them. Police have no option when they are rioters except to disperse them. And especially where stones and rocks are flying, it becomes very difficult. Now we are introducing firearms into this slowly. That makes it even more difficult. The only thing I would want to tell Kenyans is that let's protect our rights wholesale, 360 degrees, 100%. Let us remember the people who are closing their businesses. Let us condemn in the strongest terms possible any person attempting to separate democracy from the ballot box. Democracy is about voting. Losing and winning is another thing altogether. Anybody attempting to separate a Kenyan from the ballot box must be condemned, and I am waiting for the voice of Morara and the company on this. We cannot start mutilating the Constitution on sections where there is guaranteed demonstration. then you want to be protected when you are committing violence, when you are abusing other people's rights, but the police and the government of Kenya will always move to protect our rights wholesale, not selectively.
Eric, before you go, a quick comment, because I heard in your statement, perhaps alluding to the incident that has taken place since yesterday, because you mentioned when the police are trying to look for firearms, it is claimed that the person in question is a NASA supporter. I would like to imagine that you're speaking about the Jimmy Wanjigi case. Do you have any comment to that, especially with what's happened in court and that whole incident that has unfolded since yesterday with respect to Jimmy Wanjigi and the raid that's been conducted at his home and offices?
This is an investigation which is still very bitchy. It is still very raw. It will be wrong and unprofessional to comment on it at this point in time. What I told the journalist is that I was asked, what is the impact of recovering 5 firearms? I said that is a matter of serious security interest. Any firearm outside there is a threat to all of us, Yvonne, Kiraithe, Morala, and the rest of them, including NASA, Jubilee. So anytime somebody is caught, let us not start labeling which political party he belongs, which tribe he belongs, how tall he is, how short. Let us allow our security services to investigate crime for what it is, and we give them an opportunity to do it in a professional manner so that even if they find nothing, they come and tell us they found nothing, we are able to appreciate it. If they find Kiraithe had illegal firearms in his house, they prosecute him and he goes the full course of the law, without anybody saying, oh, he came from Meru, he was the government. That is irrelevant, and therefore the political party you belong to is not a license to commit crimes against Kenyans.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kiraithe. Thank you for your time. I'd like us to continue with this conversation with Macharia Njeru, who is the chair of the Independent Policing and Oversight Authority. Mr. Macharia, thank you for speaking with us. Kenyans are now looking to you to be able to tell us whether these are criminals or these are indeed policemen that are carrying out these acts. There have been reports, not just now, but I think even before, with that report from the KNCHR. You remember the cases of, shootings and tear gas in places like Lakisama. There were so many reports of persons in dreadlocks, in police uniform. Could you update us on the state of investigations into these allegations of police brutality?
Thank you, Yvonne. Let me start by saying that there are 2 sections that always govern the manner in which we undertake our proceedings within the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. The first one is Section 4 of the IPOA Act, which makes it mandatory that as we conduct our investigations, we are required to be impartial and to observe the rules of natural justice. That is one. Then secondly, under Section 25, it is mandatory for Independent Policing Oversight Authority to conduct all investigations that involve death and a serious injury arising from the actions of members of the National Police Service. So it's not like IPOA has a choice whether to investigate or not to investigate. Now, I can tell you that we have competent staff who conduct this work because they are thoroughly trained. As we speak now, generally we have over 50 police officers who are charged in court. 2 are already convicted, arising from, again, our investigations. Now, when it comes to all these post-election violence cases, we've more or less been overwhelmed by the number of investigations that we have to undertake. We've seen the report from the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights. We've not seen the one of Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, but I believe we'll have access to it. We'll compare with the numbers that we already have on our part and the numbers that we've also been given by the members of the National Police Service, and we'll undertake all those investigations. The only challenge is that investigations take time, because the threshold of evidence that is required by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution is also high. We can't afford to conduct an investigation that is not conclusive and expect that it will pass through the Director of Public Prosecutions without it being returned to us to fill in the gaps. But I can also tell you, Yvonne, that as of today, based on the evidence that we've been able to collect so far, we've concluded 3 investigations out of these post-election violence cases. I'm not talking about general investigations. And we've actually forwarded files today to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, even as we continue with the other investigations, including the investigation relating to the university case that was widely publicized. We've also made very large progress in terms of investigating that matter, and we believe within the next one or 2 weeks we'll also be able to conclude it. The challenge that we are facing, which is quite big now, is that even as we undertake our investigation, before we conclude one, another one pops up because of these continued demonstrations and the resultant death and the serious injuries that are also being occasioned on members of the public. So if at least there could be some kind of closure where there would be reduction rather than an increase, that would really help the case of Independent Policing Oversight Authority. But we are doing our best in the circumstances. We are quite confident that in the fullness of time, we should be able to get to the bottom of all these cases and ensure there's justice for the victims. But more importantly, we must remember that even as we listen to the members of the public, it is incumbent upon us under Section 4 to also listen to the members of the National Police Service.
Okay, all right. Important for there to be balance. George, I want to come to you because do you think IPOA is doing enough? Macharia says, you know, they're simply overwhelmed by the number of cases that come up. They've concluded 3 so far, particularly from this post-election season. And just saying, you know, investigations take time. What are your thoughts as to how IPOA has managed this situation, the investigations they're conducting?
Well, Yvonne, let me start by thanking the chair of IPOA, Mr. Macharia Njeru, for that update, because I think it's very important for Kenyans to know that IPOA is actually taking action, and that the police officers who are acting outside the confines of the law, action is taken against them. But I think the challenge has been in the past, Yvonne, and we've seen this whereby when police overstep the boundaries of the law. Of course, as Macharia said, the threshold of the evidentiary level threshold is higher, and they need to get the witnesses to come forward and give them the information so that they're able to actually have a watertight case. In the past, again, given the nature of the country we live in, we have cases where witnesses have not been able to come forward, therefore it becomes difficult for IPOA to continue with its work. We also know in the past there have been challenges, especially of cooperation from the police. So I'd want to agree with the chair that they're doing what they can in the circumstances, but it would have been better if the Kenyans were assured, especially when these acts take place, that if they came out to speak to IPOA, then they're not going to be threatened by anybody, and that they're safe and secure. And that also if the police came forward to really robustly collaborate with IPOA to ensure that the so-called bad apples within the police service are then weeded out.
Yeah, and what are the challenges for you, Macharia? I think George has just spoken about some of those issues because Kenyans are frustrated with this process. Mohammed Otweyo on Twitter says, IPOA is a toothless dog that cannot and will never bite. I mean, you can understand the frustrations of ordinary members of the public. What, in your view, is one of the challenges that hold you back from doing the investigations as fast as you want? I know you talked about the need that you have to speak to members of the police service as well. But what is it? I mean, maybe this would be an opportunity to make a plea for more resources, more personnel, that sort of thing. Do you believe you're truly independent?
Yes, we are truly independent. You see, remember in my opening remarks, I said that we have over 50 police officers charged in court as we speak on various counts, on various offenses. And let me also state that besides the ones who are charged in court, as I emphasized, there are already 2 convicted, and senior officers for that matter. In fact, one of the matters our organization handled together with Mr. Morara's organization. Then there are also many others where there has been administrative action taken, punishment administratively arising from our investigations. There are also many officers who have been cleared because it's not all the time that we find fault in members of the National Police Service. We are not always on fault-finding mission. It is all dependent on facts and the evidence, and based also on what we are able to get from the witnesses. So we'll clear them when there is no evidence, we'll find fault where there is, we'll take the files to the ODPP, and then ultimately, where they are criminally culpable, it is also incumbent upon the judiciary to do its work. Now, members of the public, of course, will be frustrated at times, and we can understand that because atrocities from members of the National Police Service has been a historical problem that has been there for a long time. People want to see change. And ultimately, what will be able to resolve some of these issues is if we're able to resolve the fundamental, the underlying issues within the service itself. In terms of infusing professionalism, that means training and retraining, being able to ensure that you have the right command structure, holding the officers to account right from the command level. These are issues that affect our country, and also to resolve the issues of observance of the due process of the law by the members of the public themselves. Because when you listen also sometimes to the members of the National Police Service who also complain to us, they have their story also to tell against members of the public, where they'll say that they undergo attacks from the members of the public, sometimes that they don't get the cooperation from members of the public. So there's a question also of education to the members of the public that for policing to be able to succeed to the levels that we want, there has to be cooperation between the public and the police. Because policing is not just a responsibility of the police alone.
But
for us as...
Macharia, you can understand that it seems like over time, I mean, with the new constitution, we changed it from a force to a service. But would you objectively say that that relationship has changed between the police service and the civilians? I mean, you know, the average Kenyan still remains fearful of the police. And what? What with the allegations that we're hearing of persons who are in dreadlocks dressed as police officers? Someone, Jabima on Twitter saying, is it true that some people masquerade as police are mungiki? Why should a cop have a gun and a panga at the same time? I mean, there's a lot of these things that people are seeing that don't quite signal that there has been a change from a force to a service.
Certainly, it's our position that the police have to do a lot of work in terms of getting confidence from members of the public. Because that we must all agree that still we are not yet there. That is work that has to be done by the leadership of the National Police Service to ensure that they're able to get that confidence, and that can only come if they are professional enough. But at the same time, because you see, in the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, we listen to also complaints for the members of NPS. It's not just the members of the public. And I can tell you that we have a fair number of complaints from the police themselves, where they say that they face a lot of difficulties from the members of the public, primarily when they are undertaking their enforcement duties. And that's why I'm saying that it's also important for us, even as we are condemning the members of the National Police Service, we must also look at the role that the public plays. That is not to say that we should condone rogue police, because they are there. We don't dispute that. And those are the ones that we are saying that there's a significant number that is already in court, facing charges. We will continue dealing with those ones.
Okay.
But even as we are doing that, we must also remember that they also operate under very difficult circumstances.
All right.
These post-election cases where we are hearing that there are people who are not police and they are participating in these atrocities, is a matter that requires very thorough investigation, because if it is true, then that is quite dangerous.
All right. Yeah, we have to leave our conversation at that. I'm sorry, George. I think we've heard quite a bit from both you and Mr. Eric Kiraithe. We have to leave it at that for tonight. It's definitely a conversation that continues. A lot of your feedback that continues. On Twitter, Janabi Ambajo says, informative discussion on the big story tonight, though some panelists are very good at denying. All right. There's much more where that came from. Please follow the hashtag for more conversation on this. Definitely a lot needs to be done in terms of improving the relationship between the police and civilians and getting to the heart of the matter, whether it's police who are behind these acts of brutality or criminals. Whoever it is, they have to be brought to book. And it's definitely a conversation we will continue to have in this country. Many thanks to Eric Kiraithe, the government spokesman, Thanks as well to George Marara, who is the Vice Chair of the National Commission of Human Rights, and Macharia Njeru, the Chair of IPOA, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Thanks to you as well for watching. We will see you tomorrow when we'll be chasing the next big story. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. Good night.